The student I chose is from my ninth grade regular class. She's a female. She reads a lot. I've always seen her with a book in her hand, but it seems that she has a lot of difficulty with our in-class readings. She does have a speech impediment, which I'll be discussing later. She has been recommended for IEPs and psychological testing, but her parents have refused any testing. The text I chose was from Of Mice and Men, which is the current in-class reading. I chose a 100-word passage from farther along in the book. The students are currently on page 35, and this passage is from page 67. According to the Fletch and Kincaid readability test, it is at an 8th grade reading level. First off, the student used a lot of fillers to kind of guide herself during the text. Most of her miscues were either words she didn't know or she was changing the tense of the words. She did have one word that she completely replaced. Her comprehension was kind of low, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then her impediment was very noticeable on certain words. As you can see in this first part of the passage, she had one filler at the beginning. The next big thing was she gave the word dictionary a tense. So she said dictionaried. She missed the word mauled and spectacles. And then her impediment came out on the words special and shelf. She told me her impediment was just with saying H, but it's definitely the CH and the SH sound that she has difficulty with. The second part of the passage is where things got really interesting. The first top line she completely had to repeat because she was just stumbling so much. She replaced was with has, and the fillers got more numerous as we went on. And then she continued to give past tense to words. Keep, she said kept. Lay, she said laid. And then she also missed the word tightened and said tinted. She had a big pause before the word which, and I don't know if that's because she knew that she would have issues with it with her impediment, but again, that's where I heard it. So looking at her reading score with her amount of errors, on the reading scale, she's on the high instruction, lower frustration range, meaning she's going to need a lot of support. So the type of support a student like this is going to need with this level of text is definite background knowledge. What we're doing with this text, because a lot of my students are having issues with it, is that I'm reading it aloud. While I'm reading it aloud, they are noting vocabulary that they don't understand, and we talk through them as well as complete worksheets on them. Also, by reading aloud, I'm able to think through the text with them, ask them questions about what they think is going on so it works on their comprehension. We can talk about those words that they don't know. Also, in regards to vocabulary, when I'm reading it aloud, they can hear how words are supposed to sound. So if they see a word they don't know, when I say it, they understand how it's supposed to sound. Some things I learned from this running record with this student is the metacognition that some students have. Although she wasn't quite sure what her impediment was, she knew about it. And if the pause in her running record was because she knew that she was going to stumble over the word, that's a huge thing for students to understand that they're having issues with reading instead of just thinking that they're okay. Her comprehension wasn't that great. When I asked her to describe crooks to me, she just used words that were in the text, and if I asked her what those words meant, like aloof, she had no idea. I asked her to describe crooks physically, and she said, well, I think he's black, which it's kind of obvious that he is. She knew what the passage was about. It was describing crooks in his room, but she had issues with more details. My recommendation, I think, would be to do another IRI with her with an even lower text to see how she does, maybe a 7th grade level text. and see if that's more her level. But with enough teacher support, I think she could manage to get through this. My other thing is that looking at a close versus an IRI, I could see how an IRI would help, like if you had ELL students or students with IEPs, but in a general ed classroom, general ed secondary classroom, I think a close could tell you a lot more about your students as a whole and would be more appropriate than an IRI. I usually see IRIs in elementary school, so next time I think I would do, or in my own classroom, I would do a close assessment.